Listen to me plainly. Nothing in your life will change until the way you think changes. You may change your surroundings, your companions, your work, even your address, but if you carry the same defeated mind into every new place, the same defeats will follow you. You say you want to move forward like a champion, but a champion does not begin with better conditions. He begins with a better method of thinking. Success is not an accident that falls on a man while he is asleep. It is the result of thoughts deliberately chosen, disciplines fiercely guarded, and beliefs held with such conviction that action becomes inevitable. If your mind remains cluttered with doubt, excuses, and self-pity, your feet will always hesitate. Adjust the way you think, and your steps will change without being forced. You have been taught, perhaps silently, to believe that circumstances are the chief authors of your story. You look at your past, your upbringing, your setbacks, and you say, "This is why I am stuck." That is a lie that keeps strong men behaving as if they are powerless. Circumstances can delay you. They cannot define you unless you cooperate with them in your thinking. Two men can suffer the same loss. One says, "This proves I am cursed," and sinks into inactivity. The other says, "This proves I must become stronger," and begins to reshape himself. The event is the same. The interpretation is different. And it is the interpretation that decides who moves forward and who remains in chains. The first adjustment you must make is this. Stop thinking of yourself as a victim of what happens and start thinking of yourself as an originator of what happens next. You cannot rewrite yesterday, but you have absolute authority over the next thought you choose. Right now, in this moment, you can decide, I will no longer lend my mind to images of defeat. I will no longer rehearse my failures as if they were prophecies. I will use every memory, good or bad, as fuel to go forward. That decision seems small, but it is revolutionary. The man who takes possession of his own thinking has taken back the throne of his life. Consider how you have been using your mind until now. When something goes wrong, where does your first thought travel? Does it run to blame? They blocked me. They sabotaged me. They never gave me a chance. Or does it run to responsibility? What could I have done differently? What must I improve so that next time no man can stop me? Champions are not men without enemies. They are men who refuse to give any enemy more power than they give their own decisions. The mind that habitually blames others becomes soft and bitter. The mind that habitually asks, "What can I change in myself?" becomes sharp and resilient. You must also adjust the way you think about difficulty. Right now, you treat difficulty as a signal that you should retreat. The moment a plan becomes heavy, your mind begins whispering, "It is a sign. This is not for you. Choose something easier." You have trained yourself to interpret resistance as a warning instead of a test. The champion hears the same resistance and draws a different conclusion. He says, "This is the proving ground. If it were easy, there would be no honor in reaching it." This pressure is not the gate closing, it is the gatekeeper asking whether I am serious. His thinking turns hardship from an enemy into an examination. Begin to watch your own language in your thoughts. When you say, "This is impossible," you are not describing a fact. You are issuing a command to your nervous system. You are telling your mind to stop looking for solutions. When you say, "This is difficult, but there must be a way," you give your inner faculties an order to search. The man who labels things impossible closes his own eyes. The man who labels them difficult but achievable opens his. The world has not changed. His willingness to see has changed. Champions think in terms of how instead of whether. Another adjustment you must make is the way you see yourself in relation to your goals. Right now, you treat success as something outside yourself, a distant place where fortunate men live. You imagine success as a city on a hill, occupied by the favored. You look up at it from the valley and say, "One day, if luck is kind, perhaps I will visit." That is small thinking. Success is not a distant city. It is a state built inside you long before it appears outside. The champion understands this. He says, "I must first become the kind of man who belongs in that city. When my thoughts, habits, and character match that place, the road to it will appear." He does not wait to feel like a champion. He begins to think like one long before the crowd ever sees him. Ask yourself sincerely, what kind of man would naturally achieve the results I desire? Would he rise lazily with no plan for his day? Would he store grudges in his heart and nurse them for years? Would he surround himself with idle, complaining company? Would he speak carelessly, promise lightly, and break his word whenever pressure increased? You know the answer. The man you want to be would think in a different pattern. He would regard his time as precious, his word as sacred, his companions as influences, and his energy as an investment. If you wish to move forward like him, you must begin thinking like him now, not after the rewards arrive. You must also break the habit of smallness in your thoughts about opportunity. Many men live with the belief, there are only a few chances, and I missed mine. They treat life as if it gave them one door, and since that door did not open on command, they sit in front of it for years, knocking weakly and cursing their luck. A champion thinks differently. He says, "If one door closes, I will look for another. If I do not find one, I will build one. My value, not my complaint, will carve the next entrance." This thinking keeps him in motion, always searching, always building, refusing to stake his future on a single episode of disappointment. Examine, too, the way you think about time. The defeated mind says, "It is too late for me. I have wasted too many years." The lazy mind says, "There is plenty of time. I can begin later." Both are lies pointing in opposite directions. The champion's mind says, "Time is limited, but today is in my hands. I will not throw it away in regret for yesterday or in fantasy about tomorrow. I will use this day to move one step closer." He does not flatter himself with the idea that he can make up for decades in a week. But he also refuses the despair that says a decade of waste cannot be redeemed by a decade of focus. His thinking makes time his ally instead of his jailer. You must learn to talk to yourself as a leader, not as a beggar. Most of your inner speech is pleading. I hope things work out. I hope someone notices. I hope this turns around. Hope has its place, but hope without decision is nothing more than wishful thinking. Champions do not beg the future to be kind to them. They instruct themselves to be equal to whatever the future brings. Instead of saying, "I hope I do well," they say, "I will prepare until I can do nothing else but well." Instead of saying, "I hope they choose me," they say, "I will develop myself until it would be foolish to overlook me." This is not arrogance. It is disciplined intention. You must also adjust the way you think about failure. You have treated failure as a verdict on your worth. Each time something has collapsed, you have said, "This proves I am not enough. This proves I am cursed." With such thinking, every setback becomes a wound that never fully heals. You tiptoe around life, terrified of more wounds. The champion interprets failure differently. He says, "This proves something about my strategy, not about my worth. Either my preparation was incomplete, my timing was off, or my method was flawed. I will extract the lesson, adjust, and advance. His pride is rooted not in never falling, but in never refusing to rise. If you wish to move forward like a champion, you must decide now that you will no longer tie your identity to individual outcomes. Single victories do not make you a king. Single failures do not make you a pauper. Your true identity is written in the pattern of your thinking and acting over time. Think in terms of patterns, not episodes. Ask, what is the pattern of my response to difficulty? What is the pattern of my work when no one is watching? What is the pattern of my speech about myself? Adjust those patterns, and the episodes will begin to change. You must subject your thoughts to examination as a judge would examine a witness. Do not let every thought testify without challenge. When you think, I cannot do this, interrogate it. On what evidence do you make this claim? Have I tried with full effort? Have I trained? Have I persisted past initial resistance? When you think, everyone is against me, question it. Is this truly everyone, or a few loud voices? Am I ignoring those who support me? When you think nothing ever works out, test it. Nothing? Or have I chosen to forget the times things did improve? This mental cross-examination weakens false thoughts and strengthens true ones. Champions do not believe every idea that passes through their mind. They choose their beliefs with care because they know those beliefs will steer their steps. Another crucial adjustment is to stop thinking of your mind as a place of wandering and start treating it as a workshop. A wandering mind drifts from complaint to fantasy to distraction, producing nothing of value. A workshop mind takes raw material, memories, observations, knowledge, and shapes it into plans. It thinks in terms of sequences. If I do this, then this will likely follow. If I practice here, I will become better there. When a workshop mind is confronted with a problem, it does not collapse into misery. It begins assembling tools. What do I know? What can I learn? Who has solved something similar? What step can I test? You must train your mind to move from emotion to construction. Feel what you feel. Shock, anger, sadness, but then ask, now, what can be built from this? You must also rid yourself of the habit of thinking in terms of someday. Someday is the graveyard of intention. Someday I will discipline my body. Someday I will fix my finances. Someday I will control my temper. Champions drag someday into today. They understand that the only place where thought can become action is in the present. When you catch yourself saying, I will begin when things calm down, recognize the deception. Life does not calm down. It changes form. If you do not learn to act with discipline amid current noise, you will not act with discipline amid future noise. Adjust your thinking to this. If it matters, I will take a step now, however small. Be honest about how much of your thinking has been borrowed. The phrases you repeat. That is just how the world works. Men like me never get far. You have to be born lucky. Did you arrive at these through careful observation and reasoning, or did you absorb them from discouraged mouths around you? A champion is careful about which voices he permits to build structures in his mind. He tests the thoughts handed to him before he accepts them as his own. If a belief keeps him weak, he rejects it, no matter who taught him. If a belief calls him higher, demands more of him, he holds on to it, even if it makes him uncomfortable. The greatest adjustment of all is this. You must begin to think of yourself not as someone trying to become a champion, but as a champion under construction. That may sound like a small distinction, but it is vast. When you think, I am trying, you give yourself room to quit at any time and say, well, I tried. When you think, I am in training, you expect struggle, failure, fatigue, and you do not treat them as reasons to stop. They are part of the process. A soldier in training does not abandon his post because the march is long. He knew the march was part of becoming what he signed up to be. You must take the same view of your own mind. The difficulties you face while changing your thinking are not signs you should stop. They are evidence that your old limitations are being confronted. Adjust the way you think, and you will feel something shift deep inside you. The world outside may look the same today as it did yesterday. Your income may be unchanged, your surroundings unaltered, but within, the ground will be different. You will no longer move as a man dragged by unseen chains of belief. You will begin to move as a man who has taken hold of the reins. And when that happens, forward motion ceases to be a miracle you hope for and becomes a natural consequence of who you are becoming. Once this inner shift begins, you must guard it like a flame in the wind. A new way of thinking is fragile at first. Your old thoughts have deep roots. They will attempt to pull you back into their familiar ruts. You will have days where you slip, where you hear yourself speaking with the same defeated tone you vowed to abandon, where you catch your mind wandering again through the same useless worries and old resentments. Do not be surprised. Do not declare, nothing has changed. Something has changed. You noticed? Before, you were a servant of your thinking. Now, you have begun to observe it. That awareness is the first sign that the champion in you is waking. What you must do now is to turn this awareness into a deliberate practice. A champion does not merely have strong thoughts once in a while. He maintains a certain mental posture as consistently as a soldier maintains his stance. Begin your days not by stumbling into whatever thoughts appear, but by choosing the direction of your mind with intention. Before the demands of the day rush upon you, sit for a few minutes in silence with your own ideas. Ask, how will a champion think today? Then answer that question with clarity. I will interpret problems as assignments, not punishments. I will see myself as responsible, not helpless. I will speak to myself as a commander, not as a critic. I will measure my worth by my effort and integrity, not by the comfort of my circumstances. Repeat such declarations until they are more than words. Feel the weight of them. They are instructions to your mind. From there, carry your new thinking into the first tasks of the day. The way you begin the day sets a pattern for what follows. If you begin in confusion and hurry, you will likely continue in confusion and hurry. If you begin with order and decision, you are more likely to carry those qualities forward. A champion adjusts his thinking by linking it to action immediately. If you decide, today I will act with purpose, then take your first steps with purpose. Make your bed with care. Dress with intention. Arrange your space. These small acts are more than chores. They are physical affirmations that the chaos in your mind is being replaced by order. Understand that thinking like a champion is not about boasting to yourself that you are great. Empty boasting is a sign of weakness, not strength. A truly great mind does not need constant flattery. Champion thinking is sober and demanding. It tells you you are capable of more than you have been giving. Stop behaving like a man who has surrendered before the battle begins. It praises you only when you have earned it with action. It does not indulge laziness with soft excuses. The part of you that wants comfort will call this harsh. It is not harsh. It is honest love. A mind that loves you weakly will allow you to drift. A mind that loves you strongly will insist that you live up to your potential. You must also examine the mental pictures you carry of yourself. Your outer life will never rise far above the image you hold inside. If, in your imagination, you always see yourself failing, being rejected, losing, you are rehearsing defeat. When opportunity appears, you will shrink because you have practiced shrinking. Begin to replace those images. See yourself walking into difficult rooms with calm shoulders and a steady gaze. See yourself completing the work you start, handling setbacks without panic, speaking with clarity and conviction. Do not dismiss this as fantasy. Your imagination is a tool. The man who never uses it in his favor uses it against himself by default. Champions pre-play their victories in their minds, not to avoid work, but to enter the work with a sense of familiarity instead of dread. Adjust the way you think about other people as well. A small mind sees others only as threats or as obstacles. It says, if they succeed, there is less for me. This is the thinking of scarcity, and it keeps you looking sideways instead of forward. A champion recognizes that the progress of others does not diminish him. Often, it reveals what is possible. Instead of saying, why him, not me, say, what did he learn, practice, or endure that I have not yet been willing to embrace? This turns envy into education. It keeps your focus where it belongs. On your own development, do not make the mistake of believing that champion thinking is cold or emotionless. It is not. A truly strong mind feels deeply. It simply refuses to be ruled by feelings. When disappointment hits you, allow yourself to feel it. Pretending you are above hurt is another form of weakness. But while you feel it, keep one part of your mind anchored in principle. Even in this state, I am still responsible for my response. I will not lash out and ruin what is good. I will not abandon my commitments because my heart is bruised. I can hurt and still hold the line. This balance between feeling and discipline is the mark of a mature mind. You must change how you think about your mistakes. Champions are not men without error. They are men who refuse to waste error. When you make a mistake, and you will, do not sink into shame and do not rush to cover it with excuses. Look at it plainly. Ask, what belief or habit led to this? Did I act from impatience, from pride, from fear? Then, instead of simply resolving, I will not do that again, identify what you will do differently next time. Vague regret keeps you stuck. Specific adjustment moves you forward. The man who uses each mistake as a teacher cannot remain the same for long. He is steadily shaped by his own past into a more skillful, wiser version of himself. Adjust the way you think about work. Many people carry in their mind a secret resentment of effort. They see work as something to be escaped as quickly as possible. They fantasize about a life where no demands are placed upon them, where they can simply drift from pleasure to pleasure. That is not the dream of a champion. That is the dream of someone who has never discovered the satisfaction of meaningful exertion. A champion thinks of work as the arena where his thinking is tested and refined. He does not say, how little can I do? He says, how well can I do what is before me? How much excellence can I bring into this ordinary task? This attitude transforms even lowly jobs into training ground. If you are in a position today that you consider beneath you, be careful how you speak to yourself about it. If your thoughts are constantly, this is pointless, I'm wasting my life here, you will behave in a half-hearted manner. Then, when higher opportunities appear, you will not be ready. Adjust your thinking. Say instead, "This position may be temporary, but my character is permanent. I will use this time to strengthen my discipline, sharpen my skills, and build a reputation for reliability. When the next step arises, I will already be mentally prepared." Champions outgrow situations not only by leaving them, but by first mastering their behavior within them. Your thinking about pressure must also mature. Right now, you may treat pressure as something to be avoided at all costs. You believe that a good life is one free of weight. Champions understand that pressure is what reveals their capacity. Consider the difference between a vessel that has never been filled and one that has carried heavy loads across many seasons. The first looks pristine, but its strength is unproven. The second bears marks, but its reliability is known. When you adjust your thinking to embrace pressure as proof, you stop fleeing from demanding situations. You step into them deliberately, knowing that they are the means by which you become worthy of greater trust. Be ruthless with thoughts that encourage laziness. Laziness rarely announces itself as such. It arrives in the form of gentle suggestions. You deserve a break. You have done enough. This one time will not matter. A champion's thinking answers, "Have I met the standard I set for today? Have I truly given my best effort? Or have I merely coasted on what feels comfortable?" He is not fooled by flattering lies. He looks at his actions and measures them against his purpose, not his mood. This honesty with himself separates him from the crowd. Most men are willing to lie to themselves all day long in order to avoid discomfort. The champion tells himself the truth, even when that truth demands more of him. You must cultivate the habit of mental reset. There will be days where your thinking is poor, where you allow old patterns to run wild in your mind, where you indulge complaints and fears longer than you should. If you are not careful, you will let one weak day bleed into many. A champion interrupts that spill. At any point, he is willing to say, "Enough. That hour is gone. I cannot retrieve it, but I can redeem the next one." This ability to reset in the middle of a day, to stop and realign the mind, is one of the most powerful advantages you can develop. It keeps failure from becoming identity. To strengthen this, choose a simple physical cue that signals a mental reset. It might be standing up and taking several slow breaths, washing your face in cold water, stepping outside for a few minutes of air. While you do this, deliberately release the previous hour in your mind. Say, "I was not at my best. That is over. Now I return to my standard." It may feel artificial at first, but with repetition, your body will begin to associate that cue with renewal. Instead of spiraling downward for an entire day, you will create moments of interruption where you take back control of your thinking. Another essential adjustment is to move from thinking in terms of feelings to thinking in terms of decisions. The average mind constantly asks, "How do I feel?" and allows that answer to dictate the next step. The champion's mind asks, "What did I decide?" and directs his behavior accordingly. If he decided last night that he would rise early, he does not hold a debate with himself in the morning about whether he feels like getting up. The decision has been made. If he decided he would complete a certain task, he does not start negotiating with his mood when the task becomes dull. The decision stands. This is how commitment is built, by honoring decisions over sensations. You must also learn to think in longer lines. Weak thinking is short-sighted. It considers only the immediate pleasure or discomfort of a choice and ignores its consequences. It says, if I speak harshly now, I will feel powerful without considering the erosion of trust. It says, if I avoid this demanding task, I will feel relieved without considering the future anxiety of unfinished work. Champion thinking extends the line. It asks, if I follow this impulse where it wants to go, what will this look like in a month? In a year? If I resist this impulse and instead act according to principle, what will that produce over time? When you begin to think this way, many temptations lose their allure. The short-term gain is revealed as a long-term loss. Train yourself to trace your thinking back to its sources. Many of your present thoughts are the children of earlier experiences. A harsh criticism may have taught you to expect rejection. A sudden failure may have taught you to fear risk. These experiences planted conclusions in your mind. I should never stand out. Or trying only leads to humiliation. When you find such conclusions directing your choices, do not accept them as permanent laws. Ask, when did I start believing this? Was that moment a complete picture of reality or just one event? Often, you will discover that your mind built a lifelong rule on the basis of one painful incident. A champion questions such rules. He keeps what is useful. He discards what is foolish. Be deliberate in feeding your mind with ideas that strengthen this new way of thinking. Your thoughts do not grow in a vacuum. They grow from what you repeatedly expose yourself to. The conversations you hold, the writings you read, the stories you tell. If you continually consume tales of defeat, cruelty, and hopelessness, do not be shocked when your mind assumes the world is entirely cruel and hopeless. If, instead, you regularly feed yourself accounts of endurance, wisdom, and triumph through struggle, your mind begins to regard perseverance as natural. Champions are careful about what they allow to occupy their attention. They treat their mental environment as a garden that must be tended, not a field open for any seed to be thrown in. Finally, you must understand that adjusting the way you think is not a single event. It is a continuing discipline. Your mind will never be finished. Every new level of responsibility, every new challenge will reveal areas where your thinking is still limited. This is not a sign of failure. It is the adventure of growth. The champion does not say, I have arrived. He says, I see more clearly now where I must keep sharpening. This humility keeps him learning. It protects him from arrogance, which is simply the refusal to adjust one's thinking any further. The reward for this ongoing work is profound. As your thinking changes, you will find that moving forward no longer feels like a constant struggle against yourself. You will still face resistance from the world, but you will not be fighting your own mind at the same time. Your thoughts, your decisions, and your actions will begin to travel in the same direction. The doubts that used to paralyze you will still knock at your door, but they will not be allowed to wander freely through your house. You will meet them with a new authority. You will say, I have chosen how I think now. If you do not serve that choice, you may leave. When a man reaches this point, he does not become perfect, but he becomes powerful. Not powerful in the sense of controlling others, but in the truest sense. He can control himself. That is the foundation of moving forward like a champion, because a champion is not merely one who has won, he is one who can keep advancing regardless of what opposes him. And that relentless advance, step after step, guided by a mind that has been adjusted to truth and strength, is the true mark of greatness. There comes a moment when adjusted thinking must stop living only in your head and begin to march through your feet. If you say you think like a champion, but you move like a coward, your thinking is still theory. The mind and the body must be brought into agreement. Many men spend their lives in endless mental rehearsal. They think, they analyze, they plan, they imagine, and then they go to bed having done nothing. That is not champion thinking. That is mental entertainment. A champion proves his thoughts in the furnace of action. You will know your thinking has truly changed when your daily behavior begins to offend your old self. To move forward like a champion, you must first make peace with the fact that forward motion is rarely comfortable. Your adjusted thinking has told you that difficulty is a test, not a curse. Now, you must step into situations where that belief is required. This means taking on tasks that intimidate you, starting conversations you would rather avoid, lifting responsibilities that feel heavy on your shoulders. Do not wait until you feel brave. Courage comes after movement, not before. The man who insists on feeling ready before he acts will wait until his life is spent. The man who acts while he is still uncertain discovers that readiness grows with each step. Begin by choosing one area of your life where you have been standing still in spite of your new understanding. Perhaps there is a decision you have delayed for months. Perhaps there is a skill you know you must learn, but you have allowed excuses to pile up. Perhaps there is an unhealthy habit you have promised to break one day. Bring that matter out into the open. Write it down. Say to yourself, "This is where I will prove that my thinking is not empty speech." Then, design a first step so small that you cannot honestly claim it is impossible. It may be making an appointment, setting aside an hour, having a difficult word, or discarding one object tied to an old habit. Whatever it is, commit to doing it within the next 24 hours. When the time comes to take that step, your old thinking will rise and present its arguments. It will whisper, "You are tired. You have many other things to do. This is not the right moment. You can begin tomorrow." Recognize that voice. It is not your friend. It is the ghost of your former life begging to survive. You do not need to argue with it endlessly. Simply answer, "I have already decided," and move your feet. This simple act, obeying your decision instead of your delay, is the clearest sign that you are beginning to move like a champion. Champions are not men who never hear the call of comfort. They are men who have trained themselves to ignore it when purpose is at stake. Do not despise the smallness of your first steps. Your ego will say, "This is nothing." Real champions undertake grand projects. That is pride talking, and pride is the enemy of progress. Grand projects are built upon thousands of small, unglamorous actions. The champion understands this and respects the power of small beginnings. He knows that habits are forged in quiet moments, not on stages. When he writes one page, practices 1 hour, or chooses one healthy meal, he is not amused by the simplicity. He knows that each act is a brick in a wall that will be too high for his old weakness to climb over. As you begin to act in accordance with your new thinking, you will encounter resistance not only from within, but from without. People who have grown accustomed to your former ways may feel threatened by your movement. They may mock your seriousness. They may question your motives. They may tell you that you are changing, as if that were an accusation rather than a compliment. Do not let this surprise you. Your old life did not only belong to you, it was part of the comfort of those around you. When you change, you disturb that comfort. A champion expects this disturbance. He does not become hostile, but he remains firm. He says inwardly, "I will not argue with you. I will let my results speak." In time, the same mouths that criticize may come asking how I did it. You must especially guard against the temptation to prove yourself with talk instead of work. When enthusiasm is new, there is a strong urge to announce your transformation. You want to tell everyone what you are about to do. This gives you a borrowed feeling of accomplishment. You feel as if you have already advanced, when in truth you have only moved your lips. Champions are careful here. They say very little about what they intend to do and a great deal through what they actually do. They would rather surprise the world with progress than impress it with promises. Adjust your thinking in this direction. I will speak less about my plans and let my discipline be my declaration. As you move forward, one of the most powerful tools you can use is the discipline of daily standards. Do not leave your progress to chance. Set specific, measurable actions for each day that align with your larger aim. These should not be so heavy that they crush you, nor so light that they change nothing. They should stretch you just beyond your comfort while remaining achievable with honest effort. For example, you may decide, each day I will devote this portion of time to my most important work before I attend to lesser obligations. Or, each day I will do one thing that advances me toward my larger goal, no matter how busy I am. Write these standards where you cannot avoid them. Then comes the crucial part. Keep these standards especially on days when you least feel like it. Anyone can be disciplined when the mood is high and the path is smooth. The difference between the ordinary and the champion is visible on gray days. When your energy is low, your schedule disturbed, your mind cluttered, and excuses crowding in, if in such a moment you still fulfill your daily standard, you have accomplished more than most will do with perfect conditions. Do not underestimate the cumulative force of such days. A month of faithful adherence to small standards in bad weather can do more for your character than a year of half-hearted efforts in fair weather. As you maintain these actions, take time to review them honestly. Each week, sit alone with your own record. Ask pointed questions. Did I honor my commitments? Where did I hesitate? Where did I act with courage? Do not use this review to beat yourself down, but do not use it to flatter yourself either. Aim for clear sight. A champion does not fear looking at his performance because he views every weakness discovered as a chance to improve, not as a reason to hide. If you have fallen short, admit it plainly. I failed my standard here. Then immediately follow with, what adjustment will I make to prevent the same failure? Turn regret into redesign. As your thinking and acting begin to reinforce each other, you will notice a new kind of momentum. At first, every step forward felt like pushing a heavy cart uphill. Each changed thought had to be forced. Each new habit wrestled into place. But over time, your direction becomes more natural. Your mind begins to expect effort. Your body begins to anticipate movement. The cart gains speed. This is when moving forward like a champion begins to feel less like an occasional burst and more like a way of walking. Be careful not to relax into carelessness at this point. Momentum can be wasted if you forget the principles that created it. One danger in this stage is the subtle return of arrogance. When you see yourself rising beyond former limitations, when you notice that you are now more disciplined than many around you, pride may slip in with a new suggestion. You are superior. You no longer need to watch yourself so closely. You can afford small compromises. If you entertain this thought, your decline has already begun. True champions remain humble in victory. They remember how easily they once fell and how capable they still are of falling. They recognize that their progress is not a reason to relax their guard, but a reason to guard it more carefully. Adjust your thinking to this. The higher I rise, the more carefully I must watch my steps, because the fall becomes steeper. Moving forward like a champion also requires that you adjust your thinking about pace. You have been poisoned by the idea that only rapid progress is meaningful. You see stories of swift triumph and you measure yourself against them. When your own advance appears slower, you call it failure. This is foolishness. Some seeds break the soil quickly and die just as quickly. Others remain unseen for a long time while they develop deep roots. Champions prefer deep roots to quick applause. They understand that the most powerful transformations are often the ones that look unimpressive while they are happening. The man who quietly disciplines himself for years will appear to suddenly rise. In truth, nothing sudden has occurred. His private labor has finally become visible. To adopt this patience, you must fix your eyes more on direction than on speed. Ask yourself each day, am I facing forward? Am I taking steps, however small, toward the man I have decided to become? If the answer is yes, you have reason to be encouraged. If the answer is no, then change your course, not by curses, but by concrete decisions. The champion does not measure his worth by how quickly he arrives compared to others. He measures it by his faithfulness to the path he knows is his. Forward is forward. Whether you run or walk, you must also adjust your thinking about setbacks that occur after you have begun to advance. There will be days when, in spite of your new habits and disciplines, something strikes you that knocks you down. An unexpected loss, a betrayal, an illness, a failure you did not foresee. In such moments, your old mind will say, so much for all your new thinking. It did not protect you. You are back where you started. Do not listen. Champion thinking understands that no amount of inner strength prevents life from delivering blows. The difference is in how you rise. Before, a single blow would have kept you on the ground for months. Now, you may still fall, but you will begin to look for your footing more quickly. When such a setback comes, give yourself a brief time to absorb the impact. Do not rush to pretend that nothing has happened. That is not bravery, it is denial. Feel what you feel. Then, at the earliest moment, you can ask the question that belongs to champions. Given what has happened, what is still in my control? There is always something. Your attitude is in your control. Your next choice is in your control. Your habits are in your control. The work of your own hands is in your control. Even if everything external seems shaken, your internal decision is available to you. Grasp it firmly. Say, this blow will not make me abandon my disciplines. In fact, I will deepen them. That choice alone separates the man whose story ends in lament from the man whose story turns in his favor at the very point others would have surrendered. As you continue to act, expect that your standards will evolve. What once required great effort will become easy. At that point, it no longer builds you, it merely maintains you. Champions are grateful for maintenance, but they do not live there. When an action that once tested you becomes comfortable, raise the requirement slightly. Add a little more excellence, a little more precision, a little more consistency. This gradual increase keeps you growing without breaking you. It is how a weight is lifted from being too heavy to lift, too heavy but liftable to eventually light. Your mind and will can be trained in the same manner. In all of this, perhaps the most profound shift in your thinking is this. You stop living as a man who waits to see what life will do to him, and you begin living as a man who watches what he will do with life. This is the essence of moving forward like a champion. The world will still send storms. People will still fail you. Conditions will still change without your permission, but you will have ceased to be the object tossed about and become the subject that decides his stance in every weather. You will not always feel victorious, but you will act from a victorious posture. When your thinking has adjusted to this degree and your actions have begun to match it, you will notice something in the eyes of those around you. Some may still criticize or misunderstand, but others will look at you differently. They will see that you do not react like most men. You do not collapse at the first sign of trouble. You do not become drunk on small successes. You do not speak carelessly about your own future. You carry yourself with an inner steadiness that does not shout, but it commands attention. That is the aura of a champion in motion. It cannot be faked for long, because it is the natural result of mind and deed aligned under discipline. And as you continue on this path, you will discover that the true reward is not a single great victory, but the daily satisfaction of knowing that you are no longer betraying yourself. You think as a champion and you move as one. You may still be on the way. You may still have far to go, but each step is now taken by a man who has chosen his direction and refuses to bargain it away. That knowledge gives you a quiet confidence no circumstance can steal. There is a quiet moment in every life when a man stands alone with his own reflection. No noise, no audience, no praise, no criticism, only the knowledge of what he has been thinking and how he has been moving. In that moment, the titles do not speak, the possessions fall silent, and one question remains. Did I live as the man I knew I could be? All the work of adjusting your thoughts and moving forward like a champion leads to that question. You are not doing this merely to impress others or to gather trophies that will someday gather dust. You are doing it so that when you meet your own eyes, you do not flinch. You must understand that the champion's path is not a separate road reserved for a chosen few. It is the same road every man walks, days of routine, demands of work, duties of home, hours of solitude. The difference lies not in the scenery, but in the way he travels. The ordinary man allows chance, habit, and opinion to push him along. The champion travels by decision. He looks at the same day and says, "This will not be spent carelessly. I will use it to move, even if the movement is small." This mental command is issued again and again until a whole life is shaped by it. As your thinking matures and your steps align with it, you will begin to feel a new weight upon you. Not a burden that crushes, but a responsibility that dignifies. You will see that your thoughts no longer belong to you alone. They are shaping how you treat those around you, how you respond when they fail, how you react when they succeed. A weak mind makes others pay for its weakness. It lashes out when stressed, withdraws when needed, demands constant reassurance, and leaves a trail of confusion. A disciplined mind, adjusted to truth, becomes a shelter. It can absorb tension without spreading it. It can listen without defensiveness. It can stand upright in storms so that others can lean on it. This is where champion thinking reaches beyond personal ambition and enters the realm of legacy. You are not merely adjusting your thoughts so that you can gain more. You are adjusting them so that everyone who enters your presence feels the strength of a man who governs himself. Children who watch you will learn what adulthood means. Companions who walk with you will learn what steadiness looks like. Even those who oppose you will have to admit, if only in private, that you are not easily swayed by fear or flattery. That influence cannot be faked. It is the natural result of hundreds of unseen decisions to think and move in alignment. You will notice also that as your mind grows stronger, your need for constant external approval begins to fade. In earlier years, you may have been driven by the need to be seen, to be praised, to be chosen. When you were not noticed, your thoughts turned bitter. They do not appreciate me. They do not understand. But the more you live by your own clear standards, the more you begin to measure yourself by them rather than by the applause of others. You ask, did I do what I knew was right? Did I keep my word? Did I give my best within my present limits? If the answer is yes, you stand tall even when no one claps. That is the internal independence of a champion. This does not mean you become indifferent to others or closed to counsel. On the contrary, a truly strong mind is more able to receive correction than a fragile one. The man who depends on praise must defend himself against every critique. It threatens his identity. The man who knows his worth, is anchored in his own discipline, can listen calmly. He weighs what is said. If it is unjust, he discards it without resentment. If it is true, he accepts it without shame. He says, if this will make me better, I want it. That openness, combined with firm self-command, creates a mind that is ever improving instead of constantly defending itself. As you move forward with this mindset, your relationship with failure changes once again on a deeper level. At first, you learn to see failure as feedback rather than a verdict. Now you can go further. You can see even your past failures as raw material for your story rather than stains to be hidden. Champion thinking does not pretend that the wrong turns never happened. It acknowledges them and then claims them. Yes, I fell there. Yes, I was foolish there. But I did not stay down. I learned. I changed. That fall is part of what made this strength possible. In this way, even your darkest chapters are pulled into service. They become proof of resilience instead of monuments to shame. You will also grow more careful about the promises you make. Weak thinking treats promises lightly as tools to gain relief or approval in the moment. I will do this, it says quickly, and later, when the cost appears, it whispers, they will understand. Champion thinking understands that every promise is a line written in your own character before it is written anywhere else. When you say, I will, and then do not, you are not only disappointing another, you are teaching your own mind that your word is not to be taken seriously. Each broken promise lowers your voice inside yourself. Each kept promise, especially when it hurts, raises it. The champion guards his promises because he knows they are the beams supporting the structure of his integrity. Pay attention to how you think in moments of success as carefully as in moments of difficulty. Earlier, your mind may have leaped to two extremes when things went well. Either you dismissed success, saying, this was only luck, thereby refusing to learn from what you did right. Or you glorified yourself, saying, I did this because I am superior, thereby making it harder to see where you still needed to grow. Adjusted thinking does neither. It receives success with sober gratitude. Something went well here. Let me understand why. Let me strengthen the habits that produced it. It does not forget that every success, however large, hangs on thousands of small decisions that could easily have gone another way. This keeps your heart both thankful and alert. As your inner life becomes more ordered, you will see clearer distinctions in the choices that appear before you. Previously, you may have spoken of life as confusing, as if you never knew what to do. Often, that confusion came not from lack of knowledge, but from unwillingness to face what you already knew. The decision that aligned with your highest values usually stood plain, but it was also the harder one. The easier option disguised itself as reasonable or practical. Now, with a champion's thinking, you lose patience for such disguises. You admit to yourself, this choice is easier but smaller. That choice is harder but truer. You may still struggle, but at least you are arguing with reality instead of pretending not to see it. You will also learn to think more clearly about what truly belongs to you and what does not. A weak mind insists on controlling everything and everyone, clinging to outcomes it cannot guarantee. It says, they must respond this way. Events must unfold that way. If not, all is lost. A champion's mind recognizes the limits of its domain. It knows that it cannot control the thoughts of others, the turns of fortune, or the full consequences of every choice. It focuses instead on what is undeniably its own. The attitude it holds, the effort it brings, the honesty of its dealings, the courage of its actions. This focus does not make you passive, it makes you powerful. You stop wasting thought on what you cannot command and begin investing all your strength in what you can. There will be moments when you feel weary of this constant vigilance over your thinking. You will long for the careless ease of your former days, when you allowed your mind to drift wherever it pleased and called that freedom. When such longing arises, remind yourself of where that so-called freedom led you. Confusion, inconsistency, regret. The discipline you practice now is not a cage, it is a path. It may be narrow at times, but it leads somewhere you actually want to go. The old openness, where any thought was welcome and any impulse could reign, was not a field of liberty, it was a swamp. It held you, but it did not carry you. A champion outgrows his nostalgia for that swamp. He remembers the fog, the stagnation, and he chooses the road instead. As years pass and you continue this way of thinking and moving, you will experience something many never do. You will feel yourself becoming reliable. Not occasionally strong, not briefly impressive, but steady. People will begin to say, without ceremony, if he says he will do it, he will. If he commits, he follows through. If trouble arises, he does not vanish. That reputation is not built by speeches. It is built by countless days when you adjusted your thoughts in the direction of responsibility and then walked according to those thoughts when it was costly. It may not seem dramatic as it happens, but it is more valuable than any sudden burst of attention. Reliability is the currency of trust, and trust is the soil in which lasting influence grows. You will come to see that moving forward like a champion does not mean you are always in front of others. Sometimes it will mean stepping back so another can advance. Sometimes it will mean standing quietly while someone else receives the reward, knowing that your contribution is known to you and to your conscience, even if it is not praised. Weak thinking cannot endure this. It demands constant recognition. Champion thinking can. It knows that your worth is not diminished by another's success. It knows that your own path is not shortened by applauding someone else's accomplishment. In fact, the ability to rejoice in the rise of another without resentment is itself a mark of greatness. You will also understand more deeply than before that you are not fighting against the world nearly as much as you are fighting against your own lower tendencies. Laziness, fear, vanity, resentment. These are the true opponents. They wear many faces and use many voices, but they all share one goal: to keep you from living at full strength. The world may throw obstacles in your way, but if you have conquered these inner foes, you will find ways around or through those obstacles. If you let these inner foes rule, even an open road will not take you far. The champion's greatest victories are won in private, at the point where he refuses to let these forces dictate his thoughts any longer. There will be days when you miss the mark badly, when old patterns surge up stronger than you expect, when words you thought you had outgrown fly from your mouth, when actions you swore you had left behind reappear. In those hours, you must be careful how you think. Weak thinking will say, "This proves you have changed nothing. You may as well give up." Champion thinking says, "This proves I am still in process. I stumbled, but I know the way back. I will correct, apologize if needed, learn what triggered this fall, and move forward again." The difference between these two responses is the difference between a man who uses a failure as a permanent label and a man who uses it as a temporary interruption. As you age, the fruits of your thinking will become clearer. The man who never adjusted his thoughts, who let bitterness rule him, who allowed fear to drive his decisions, will often sit surrounded by the wreckage of delayed dreams, broken relationships, and a heavy, unspoken regret. He may blame others. He may blame fate. But deep within, he will know he betrayed himself by refusing to change the way he thought when he still could. The man who did the hard work of adjusting his mind and walking accordingly will not have a perfect life. No one does. But he will have a life marked by growth, by depth, by progress that does not depend on youth or on ideal conditions. You will not be able to command what others say about you. They may overlook what you have become. They may reduce your story to a few sentences that do not capture its weight. That is their concern, not yours. What matters is that when you are alone with your thoughts, you can say with honesty, "I did not let my lower self write my days. I did not drift. I did not live surrendered to every fear and excuse that visited me. I took charge of my mind. I directed my feet. I kept moving forward, even when it was lonely, even when it was slow, even when it was costly." That is the quiet declaration of a champion. So, adjust the way you think, fiercely, daily, without apology. Reject thoughts that keep you small. Welcome those that call you higher. Then move. Move when you are inspired and when you are not. Move when you are afraid and when you are confident. Move when you are applauded and when you are ignored. Each step taken from this transformed mindset is a sentence in the story of a man who refused to let life happen to him while he stood still. One day, when your strength is not what it once was and your race is near its end, you will look back along the road you have traveled. You will see the places where you almost turned back, the storms that nearly drove you to shelter, the crossroads where you could have chosen the easier surrender. And you will see that at each of those points, a certain thought made the difference, a thought of responsibility, of courage, of persistence, chosen by you. Those thoughts and the actions they produced will stand like bright markers along your path. They will tell you, without needing words, that you did indeed move forward like a champion.